In the world we live in, civilizations have always risen and fallen, with one so memorable that apparently the average male thinks about them at least once a week, like the Roman Empire. And then there are also civilizations that not the average worldly citizen has ever even heard of. Today we shine light on the Thracians. According to our history books, and actually the ancient Romans themselves, the Thracians were nothing more than a barbaric, primitive, incapable folk. Personally, I haven't heard of the Thracians either until I made a trip to Bulgaria back in 2021. And their architecture, culture, and mystery left me in awe. Yet, who were they, and why is so little known about them? Well, the latter question is actually quite easy to explain. They did not have an indigenous form of writing, and so most we know about them actually come from outside sources. So the perspective we have of them is very skewed to say the least, as we see again and again and again with cultures that we can only really refer to from texts written by their conquestors. This does not mean though that the Thracians were unimportant. In fact, their territory was so big that the ancient Greek historian Andron of Halicarnassus believed that Thrace was a continent in itself, reaching from the Danube River all the way to northern Greece. The origins of the Thracian civilization are left in the mist of history. However, population in the area is assumed to go back as far as 6000 BC, when it's just supposed to be primitive people. Civilization in the area, on the other hand, supposedly started around 1200 BC. I do have some questions with this date though, and I have a question for you to maybe understand my questioning of this date as well. Where do you think the oldest golden treasure ever was found? Egypt? Well, it's quite easy if I make this in the context of this video, but I bet it would have been a difficult question if you wouldn't have had that context. But close to modern Varna. And it wasn't just coins, it was elaborate jewelry and masks, fascinating stuff, and I would also argue not quite as primitive. It looks pretty civilization-y to me, and that date is 4600 BC. And so history repeats again, a primitive civilization suddenly rising up and inventing music, poetry, their own language which is now extinct, and sophisticated archaeology. Poof! And they say magic isn't real? So similar to Germanic tribes, the Thracians were never unified and rather consisted of multiple clans sharing similar customs. Which was quite lucky to the other civilizations in the area, like the Greeks and Romans, who actually hired the Thracians to fight for them in battles as mercenaries, as they say that the Thracians were some of the most capable fighters they knew. Herodotus himself actually said that if they were under one ruler, or united, they would, in my judgment, be invincible and the strongest nation on earth. Quite something to say for a civilization that you call primitive. And for their claims of the Thracian barbaric primitive nature, they took quite a lot out of their mythology. Orpheus is probably the most prominent figure of Thracian mythology, a musician so talented that he would make rocks and trees fly through the air, calm storms, and even seduce Hades on a journey to an underworld to save his wife Eurydice, which he tragically lost forever by looking back. However, perhaps it may have been for the greater good, as he came back a prophet sharing immense knowledge with his people, like the immortality of the soul and the reincarnation of it, by practicing abstinence of meat, wine, and also refusing to do animal sacrifices, which were very common back in the day, as he believed that animal souls are deeply connected to human souls. The other god that the Greeks and Romans really loved of the Thracians was Dionysus, or Bacchus, the god of wine, excess, and theater. I guess it's about balance. I mean, if you have one saint, you gotta have a sinner. And on that note, although maybe not fitting in the context, some even say that Dionysus was an inspiration for Jesus, whilst others may be reminded of the ancient cult of Dionysus, a collective of the most famous playwrights and prominent politicians who wrote plays in order to affect the opinion of the masses. Good thing we don't have those in our times, huh? Well, as teased earlier, Thracian remains are actually quite phenomenal. Peperikon, for example, a huge city temple complex for Dionysus, in which Alexander the Great heard of his destiny that he may conquer Rome. The tomb of Svestari with its immaculate artwork. Or Urbekluk Tush, a destroyed megalithic gigantic stone circle where there is a 150-ton rock balancing on 2 small points. Although, who knows how old that really is. I don't want to give credit to the Thracians here, and I hope they're not mad at me for that. And there are many more fantastic ancient sites all over this region. Some Thracian cities mentioned in ancient historical texts are actually still missing, and we're not sure if they're real or if they aren't. Just like the famous Troy was by the mad lad Henrik Schliemann, who then after finding it equipped his wife with some 1,000-year-old jewelry found to flex on the haters that didn't believe in it. Don't know if that would happen again, however, there are some potential lost cities in the area, which is also why I will be returning back there soon. Around this time last year, I was living on the Azores Islands to look for Atlantis for 3 months, and maybe it's just the season kicking back in and I want to go back on an adventure, so I'll be reporting from there soon. And if you don't want to miss out on what I find, go follow me on Instagram, subscribe to this channel, and for some background information, go check out my podcast Reflection, which means a lot to me, and there you can feel out a little bit more about this move and also the Atlantis expedition. And also, if you're from the area, let me know which sites I cannot miss on my expedition there. As always, much love, embrace the unknown, and as above, so below. That's Hermeticism and not Satanism. Today we shine light on the Thracians. Thracians. That makes so much more sense than the way I've been pronouncing it.